Well, hello, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and let's get started. A few people may still be joining us, but I appreciate everyone's time and being here with us tonight. I'm Cindy Ragland. I'm with the Alabama Trails Foundation, and we are your hosts for tonight. I'm going to be joined by a couple additional staff members from the Trails Foundation. Joe Watts, who you've met, he's our communication specialist and will be our moderator. He's helped us help you get on board and will help you through the chat, and anything you need, you can just chat with him and he'll help you through that tonight. Jacob Richards is working behind the scenes. He's our GS manager and our data steward, and he's kind of directing everything to make sure the technology runs smoothly. In a little bit, you'll meet Lea Ann Macknally of McNally Land Design and Will McGarity of Stick Architecture. They are the contractors that we are working with for the Jogloma-Scott Lake project, and they will present their actual project design to us tonight. So the topic of this webinar is the Jogloma-Scott Lake project. It's the result of a 5-year partnership with the U.S. Forest Service. The Forest Service has been and continues to be a partner in our work on the Pinhoti Trail, including the mapping and planning and project development. And I believe we have a few of them on the line tonight. So thank you to them for joining us. The purpose tonight is to both let us share some information with you about the status of the plans, and to learn from you who are watching. We'd like to gain some additional insights about the project area and a better understanding of current potential use. And following the webinar, you're going to get an opportunity to complete a survey and about your experiences at the project area. Joe will tell you more about this. We'll also have an opportunity to open up the chat and talk to you about, help you with any questions you may have thought of during the presentation. Go ahead and put them in the chat. We'll be processing those and get back to you at the end of the presentation. You know, we are a nonprofit. I'll go into a little bit more detail about that. And we're in partnership with the Forest Service to do the technical plans and provide them with information. In the next month or so, we're going to submit that information to the Forest Service. And this information and the documentation of tonight's webinar will be part of that. We are not the deciding entity on whether this project moves forward. That authority lies with the Forest Service, specifically the District Range of the Talladega National Forest. The Forest Service will review our information, do their own due diligence and compliance with the laws that govern their land management policies. They may invite additional comment from you, depending on the amount of information we're able to provide them, or if they have additional questions, that's within their purview. Our role is to provide technical information to the Forest Service and be a good partner to them, and the Forest Service will determine if our information is complete. So, you know, we're here to help. We're here to be a good partner and to work side by side with the Forest Service, but this is the Talladega National Forest, and the decision authority belongs with them. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Joe. He's got some housekeeping information for you, and after that he'll kick off the presentation. And thank you again for being with us tonight.
Great, thank you, Cindy, and thanks to everybody who's participating in this call. It's so helpful to be able to share information and then to hear your feedback, and that feedback will be a twofold kind of thing. At the end of the presentations, there'll be some time for the presenters to review the chat questions that have been asked during chat, and we'll also have an opportunity to just ask questions in general. During the presentation, please keep your microphones on mute and your video set to off. We appreciate that. That'll just allow for everybody that's doing the presenting to be more noticeable, and we really do appreciate that. So anytime during the presentation, please feel free to use the chat function. You'll see it down in the bottom of your screen, depending on what kind of device you're using. Just click on that and type a question or a comment in, and we'll do our best to answer those questions and comments after the presentations, and we'll also be compiling them so we have a little FAQ kind of situation at the end. After the presentation, sometime later in the week, everybody that registered will receive an email with a survey. So please take time to take the survey. It's short. It should be 5 to 7 questions. Shouldn't take you but 2 or 3 to 5 minutes to complete, and it will provide us with some valuable information. So we really do appreciate it. And with that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. Now for a bit of background on the Alabama Trails Foundation. We were created by the Alabama Trails Commission in 2012 as a result of legislation signed into law by the governor in 2010. We are an independent nonprofit organization, but maintain a close partnership with the Alabama Trails Commission and their advisory board, as they are entities with in-depth knowledge and research on the trails in Alabama. Our charge is to represent all of Alabama and all trails and to serve the public in roles not traditionally filled by government. We take that charge to mean we work on behalf of trail users across all levels of government, often bringing agencies, corporations, elected officials, trail volunteers, academia, and citizens in general together to work on shared interest or resolve issues. We take on the task of fundraising and develop private-public partnerships to benefit trails. We work to build consensus and develop shared visions. We are advocates for using the best science and design to develop and maintain sustainable trails. We approach trail sustainability as the intersection of the environmental, social, economic sustainability, meaning that we strive to build all 3 of those components into our projects and programs. Our first trail project is the Alabama Pinhoti Trail. It's a hiking trail traversing 6 Alabama counties. The Pinhoti currently exists formally as 140 miles of foot traffic only hiking through the Talladega National Forest and Cheaha State Park. There are additional segments on the Weogufka State Forest and tracts of Forever Wildlands. Only a small portion, 27 miles, has been designated as a national recreation trail, although it's often referred to in its entirety as such. To become a fully designated national recreation trail, all managers and landowners must be aligned with a shared management vision and formally agree to the designation. To support our public land managers and help answer the sustainability questions for the Pinhoti Trail, we first developed the master plan. It's officially titled the Alabama Pinhoti Trail Built Environment Master Plan, Guidelines for Design, Construction, and Maintenance. This work was completed in June of 2019 and provides an inventory and assessment of the Pinhoti Trail in Alabama. You may find a digital copy of this plan on our website, thealabamatrailsfoundation.org. The introductory pages provides details on the background of how the Alabama Trails Foundation came to work on the Pinhoti and the research and public engagement that helped guide the development of this master plan. The master plan provides case studies of areas that have potential for improved hiker amenities that will position the trail as a destination and provide connectivity to nearby communities. These case studies are often in special places along the trail featuring historic, cultural, scenic, or ecological components. They serve as launching points for additional research and discussion. This deeper dive into the uses of the trail and its footprint on the land provides the opportunity for a more detailed conversation and formal arrangements with the responsible officials. It also allows the foundation to develop a fundraising campaign and develop the needed private-public partnerships. One case study from the master plan was Flag Mountain. We recently celebrated the completion of the first phase of improvements there. Working with the Alabama Forestry Commission and other partners, we were able to be a part of the restoration of the observation tower and construct a half-mile ADA accessible approach trail from a new parking lot to the tower. This project began with public engagement, a site plan, a cultural resources survey, and development of construction documents. The work to date at Flag represents over $1 million investment in restoring and improving an iconic landmark and providing better access to the Pinhoti Trail. And there's more to come. Jogloma-Scott Lake is the second case study that we are taking a deeper look at. It's in partnership with the U.S. Forest Service and is located on the Pinhoti Trail within the Talladega National Forest. We are working under a formal agreement with them, and they are making a financial contribution to this project plan. Work presented tonight has been developed in coordination with the staff from the Talladega National Forest, along with technical specialists from their Montgomery and Atlanta offices. We are also working with the University of Alabama Office of Archaeological Research to assess the historic and cultural significance of this site. This work, once complete, will involve a review and consultation with the Alabama Historical Commission. Our research to date at the Jogloma-Scott Lake area examines the unauthorized use of motorized vehicles within the Pinhoti Trail corridor and even on the trail itself. We have asked professional engineers to review the stability of the earthen dam that creates the lake. We have mapped and documented non-native invasive species, as well as looked at the hydrology of the area, including the siltation within the lake and movement of soil into the creek. We have talked to the crew of volunteers that maintain the area of Pinhoti and asked for their input on reoccurring maintenance issues. At this point in the project, it would be most helpful to us to learn from you about current use of this area and get a better understanding of what potential uses might be. A goal for our projects is for the investment to be relevant to the hikers as well as the nearby communities. We are interested in any information you may have that can better inform this project. We look forward to your questions and comments at the end of the presentation. Thank you. And I will now turn to Lea Ann Macknally of McNally Land Design for the presentation of the Jogloma-Scott Lake project. Lea Ann?
Thank you, Cindy. As Cindy mentioned, I'm Lea Ann Macknally with McNally Land Design. We've had the pleasure, along with our partner, Stick Architecture, of working with the Alabama Trails Foundation and the U.S. Forest Service on the Jogloma-Scott Lake project. And so we're going to give you a little bit of orientation and then walk through the existing conditions of the site and then the proposed enhancements. So the screen that you see up here that Cindy's been talking from as well is part of the Pinhoti Trail Built Environment Master Plan. That's the snapshot in the bottom left. And then you can see the Pinhoti Trail on the right-hand side. The location of Jogloma-Scott Lake is approximately 4 miles due west of the Porter's Gap trailhead along the Pinhoti Trail, and it's located in the Talladega National Forest. So this is a little bit broader vicinity map. So you can see the Porter's Gap trailhead here, and then zooming into this circle here, this is the location of Jogloma-Scott Lake. And so you can see where that is. We're really just south of the city of Talladega and north of Ashland, Alabama, along Highway 77. So there is vehicular access to the site, and that's one of the issues and opportunities that we'll be talking a little bit about today and giving you some feedback about what that context means in regards to having a primitive hiking trail through the area. So here's a little bit of a view of a snapshot from the site of the amazing conditions that we have throughout the site. Jogloma-Scott Lake was initially constructed as a private lake along Dry Creek, which flows now through the Talladega National Forest. The property was acquired by the U.S. Forest Service in around 1969, and it has approximately a 4-acre lake that is built with built on a natural stone spillway that retains the lake as it flows to the south. And so here is that spillway that you see. This is a view from the top of the dam looking north along the lake. And then you have views of the creek flowing, into and out of the lake itself. The bottom center picture is a view from the top of the Pinhoti Trail looking down into the lake. And one of the unique features about this site is that the Pinhoti Trail goes and carries you down to the level of the spillway around the lake and then up the other side. So you get about 180-degree views around Jogloma-Scott Lake. But what this also means is that it carries you through a creek, which in your hiking in terms of trying to cross that creek, your only options are to get a little wet and cross the creek, or if the creek is high, to sit there and wait it out till the creek goes down. So what we'll be looking at today is options for improving that access around the site so that hikers continue on through the site. And here's a few of the existing conditions. This is a broader map looking at where you're coming off of Highway 77 and getting into the U.S. Forest Service roads here. There's an existing gate where you can get off the road and go into gate 621A. And then you can come in through gate 6, the second gate along the roadway. So this is pretty open, very much maintained forest land. And so you have very clear understory with the pine hardwood forest that's growing through there. And what this does is it really is open to vehicular traffic that comes down through, and this is unauthorized vehicular access that comes down through the site. There's a larger clearing here, which you can see in the top right-hand picture here. And then as you go on down to the lake, there is a roadbed that's been kind of created by this unauthorized vehicular use. And what this roadbed has done, and this vehicular use has done, is it's causing a significant amount of erosion that goes into the creek, and then it's also disturbing the habitat around through there, and then creating some opportunities for vandalism and things like that throughout the site. And there are some former cabin sites that were built as part of the original construction of the lake. So we have some stone foundations that are down closer to the lake. With this disturbance through here, we have some failing infrastructure with an old concrete storm pipe that has failed. And so it's causing a little bit of a backup with some stormwater that's trying to flow down from the hillside and get into the lake and not quite getting there. And this has become a pretty attractive area for some invasive species such as bamboo and parrot's feather that's in the lake itself. And then you can see in the top left hand, we have this significantly eroded hillside where vehicles and ATVs are coming down, and it's causing sedimentation into the pond, into the lake and the creek. And so in addition to the erosion, the invasive vegetation, one of the things is that when people are traveling through this site, they really don't know where they are and where they're not supposed to be because there is not clear signage. And so that's one of the opportunities that we're looking at for the site as well. Okay. And here's some better pictures of those issues that I just mentioned. And so you have the invasive species, the erosion. And so we have a natural swell here that's pretty vegetated, but all the water is going down where this roadbed has been created here. And then with the sedimentation into the lake and the creek, we have invasive parrot feathers that's finding that very hospitable, and that's choking out some of our native species there. So what we're looking at doing to increase usability and restore some of the natural conditions of the site is doing some proposed enhancements through the site. So going back to this initial gate, we see this as an opportunity for just signage identification, rules, letting people know where they are and what roads are open, but looking at a controlled access road that takes you into this existing clear turnaround. and utilizing this clear turnaround as a trailhead area. So formalizing that so that there's defined parking areas for vehicles and being able to terminate any vehicular access at this location. So moving the second gate, which is primarily unused, not a significant purpose to that, but relocating that where we have this cleared area so that we can create a trailhead signage for the parking and to be able to allow more ease of access for day users down to the lake itself. So the yellow dash line that you see through here, this is what we're looking at is restricted access road. And so this would be able to utilize the existing road bed, but have that as a controlled access that is only used for maintenance purposes, such as by the U.S. Forest Service or any of those that are maintaining the Pinhoti Trail, and being able to get them down closer to the trail for equipment and clearing out for things like that, and some other improvements that we'll talk about here in a minute. But beyond the cabin sites, we're looking at having that as a turnaround, and then where you have this road bed that's been created down to the creek, of really restoring that area, realigning the Pinhoti Trail just slightly to take us to a new proposed bridge, which we'll talk about here in just a minute, that will cross the creek below the spillway. But then also just be able to control that access and restore the native vegetation along that way will help a lot with the stormwater control and being able to limit any of the invasive species that comes in. And so that having that road hierarchy through there is really going to help to be able to restrict that access. And that what that's going to do is it's going to provide improved hiking, access to the lake and amenities, and just better conditions all around. So zooming in more to the lake area enhancements, this faded gray line that has the 1 on it, this is coming down to the existing cabin sites. And so this is where we're talking about terminating that road bed that would be for the restricted access for maintenance services, and then doing a slight realignment for the Pinhoti Trail, which is in the dotted location here. The improvements that you see in this general area are really to increase usability from a day hiker or just an experience around Jogloma-Scott Lake. And this would include removing that failed stormwater concrete pipe that I mentioned, and doing a creek restoration project so that we get better flow from the stormwater coming down from the mountainside into the lake. And then it also gives us an opportunity to create a boardwalk system that could be used for an educational opportunity, so an outdoor classroom, and creates a series of loop trails that connect back to the Pinhoti in this location, and then people can hike in from the trailhead itself that we had talked about. So location here that has the number 3 on it, this is the bridge area, and Will's going to talk about the bridge area enhancements in just a minute. But in addition to that, we have, you know, older Forest Service roads on the other side that we're also looking at restricting access to make sure that we are limiting and restricting any access down to the creek bed itself. And so this will reduce conflict between unauthorized vehicle uses and then hikers on the trail. And then doing privet eradication and doing a restoration of any vegetative management that we need to do through the site. And then moving on to talking a little bit more about the educational opportunities here. So this would be able to set us up for us to be able to do interpretive signage and kind of tell the story of the site itself, tell the story of the Pinhoti Trail, and then look at those environmental restoration projects that we just talked about with the vegetation restoration and the stormwater management and better erosion control practices throughout. So I think that kind of gives us the highlight overview from all of the existing conditions and proposed improvements from where you can access the site via vehicle to the cabin and lake itself. And so that brings us to the bridge area enhancement plan. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Will to let him give us a little bit more detail about that.
Okay, thanks, Lea Ann. Yeah, so we've zoomed in here on the area of the spillway in the existing dam to see more precisely where some of the alignments of the Pinhoti change to cross the creek from crossing the creek at water level to bridging over the creek. So the major infrastructure element in this part of the site is a 60-foot pedestrian bridge just to the north here that crosses Dry Creek. So you can see the alignment of the trail coming from the southwest and then crossing the bridge and then reconnecting back to the east along some of the restored roadbed that's been restored to a more of a primitive trail. One also thing to note here with the addition of the bridge is that all vehicular access across the creek has been limited, and so the proposal is that to limit the access for vehicular traffic and to restore sort of a natural waterways, stormwater waterways in this area. Doing two things. So on the east side, where the old roadbed, the idea of closing the roadbed with a series of sort of natural boulder features that limit access down the old roadbed. And also, as you get down that roadbed, beginning to stop the erosion that exists along that roadbed into the creek, and sort of forcing that water into a sort of channel that you can sort of see in the topography there that comes from the boulder drop down to the creek. So that's on the east side, and on the west side, sort of doing double duty where you have we're bringing back the language of the teaching area that we have on the lake as the boardwalk. And here it presents itself as a platform that can serve as multiple functions. It can serve as a tent platform. It can also serve as a outdoor classroom. So you can imagine accessing the creek as a class to take samples or to do some sort of research there, and having a flat portion, an area to lay out and to teach from onto that and that teaching platform. The teaching platform also has a sort of a nice view of the spillway, and you'll be able to see sort of the lake beyond. So you can easily begin to see how someone with an easel example could bring their easel in their class out here to do sort of art classes. So to expand that idea of outdoor education into some of the other disciplines. I think next we're going to look at sort of zoom in on the bridge and talk more specifically about what the bridge is doing. So the bridge is a 60-foot single spanning bridge. It's got a slight slope as you move from the higher ground on the eastern bank down to the lower ground on the western bank. The drawing on the far left shows, so we've narrowed the bridge down to 4 feet wide, so that it is truly a pedestrian bridge. And that your experience of the bridge is where you can cross it, and if you want to, your hands can sort of run along both sides of the bridge. The other thing to note, sort of in this drawing, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, is the character of the bridge. We don't want to detract from the natural setting. So the bridge itself will be a steel bridge. That's a type of steel that has a rust that when it weathers, it actually serves to protect, similar to the way that the Statue of Liberty has that patina on it that protects it from corrosion. This bridge would have a weathered steel, sort of like a rusted steel finish that protects from corrosion. And the abutments, the parts that hold up the bridge on each side of the span would be a concrete, but we're proposing to do sort of a board form concrete So when you form the forms for the concrete before you pour the concrete into them, using sort of boards with the texture of wood grain on them, that those then imprint onto the finished character surface of the bridge abutments itself. So what that would look like on the site is if you're standing where this man in the yellow rain jacket is standing, looking back downstream from the spillway with the spillway behind you, you begin to see that there's, the functional bridge that has some aesthetics that do not detract from, experiencing nature. So we're obviously, built environment is introducing unnatural elements, but we're introducing them in a way that doesn't detract from your experience of nature. So looking back towards the bridge here, you can see, like, as you cross over the bridge, this would be your view looking towards the spillway. And the idea that it is that you can get up on this bridge and you can experience this creek in a way, whether it's from a viewing or photography or standpoint, where you can pause sort of mid-span in the creek and have an experience that you currently cannot have. So, whether it's looking down into the creek to see what you can see sort of swimming in the water, looking upstream, as is shown here, to see sort of a view of the spillway, or then even if you turn around, the view downstream, you begin to see, as the topography sort of levels out and the rock outcroppings sort of come down into lower land of Dry Creek here, sort of how the native vegetation sort of negotiates that change in topography, and also this really beautiful view of sort of overhanging trees and rock outcroppings of Dry Creek as it goes downstream. So that's our presentation, and I think what we're going to do now is we're going to open it up for questions. So if you have any questions, now would be the time to ask.
Okay, so thank you everybody for listening in. We do have a few questions that have come in with the chat. And so Joe, I think, are you going to orient us and kind of make sure we get question number 1 on down, and I can help direct about who from the team side and the Trails Foundation side might be able to help answer the questions?
Sure, I can do that. Let's see. I think one of the questions was securing it's not really a question, it's more of a comment. Securing this area will be key. The current gates don't work. This is a heavily hunted area with lots of ATV and equestrian activity. And that ATVs also come down from Pinnacle. I think that's number 307.
Right. So I think Matt had those questions, and I'll be happy to answer that. Yes, we do agree that the gates are problematic to be able to be secured fully on the site, and we just have a great maintained understory, and it's pretty level and flat. So with I think this question may have come in before we got to the gate relocation, but how we're proposing to address that is, number 1 is signage, and let people know where they should be and what their rules are. And we know some people don't abide by that, but thank you. If you'll flip back to, yes, that one. So where the orange dot is with the existing turnaround, we do have the ability to relocate a gate here. There's some grade changes, and there's a little bit of there's a lot of benefit that we have to the actual swells on either side of the roadbed that's there now. So by relocating the gate, we can relocate the gate and use the natural terrain to help restrict that access at that point to keep people from getting down into the creek. So that is one proposition to be able to address the traffic. And then also, go and make sure that I had those questions done. The ATV. So thank you from looking at the ATVs coming down from Pinnacle on 307. We are looking, that is the opposite side of the road. Opposite side of the creek. Thank you. We are looking at restrictions for that. So some of this would be to create natural boulder stop points using the natural land feature so that we can cut off the access and discourage the access from the ATVs from that side as well. And so we've got field survey information of that, and that's being built into the proposed plans.
Great. We've got some other good questions. Are you ready for the next question, Lea Ann? Okay. Will a boundary be established? Also, Matt Benfield, will a boundary be established to protect students from the heavy hunting that happens in this area?
Okay. Cindy, can I direct that one to you? Because this is kind of operationally, I know you've been having a lot of conversations with the Forest Service.
Thanks, Lea Ann. I think I'm unmuted now. Another good question. And we know there's heavy hunting pressure in that area. One of the things I'll take you back to, first off, that's not within our span of design relative to what we were tasked with. But I'll take you back to those of you who went to Flag Mountain reopening ceremony, and there were some very important words from the governor, who spoke of a stronger collaboration with the State Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, the U.S. Forest Service, and the State Forestry Commission. I think that is going to be a critical component of this as we move forward. That's going to be a good opportunity to talk about the interaction between our traditional hunting uses and hikers. And I am looking to them for leadership in how they establish policies moving forward. But it's kind of outside the scope of what we were tasked to do here. But good question. Thank you for bringing that up.
Great. Couple of other questions. I think this one's a nice straightforward one from an Alabama Trails Foundation board member. How long would the hike be from the gate?
Okay. And to clarify, I believe this is from the proposed kind of gate turnaround area down to the lake. So it's really just a couple of minute hike. It's an easy access down the hillside. It's straight in line with, but visually you cannot see the trailhead area from the cabin sites or the Pinhoti Trail itself because of the natural terrain and the vegetation. So it's a short hike. I don't have the distance off the top of my head, but that is something that we can verify, but it is not visible. So when you are on the trail itself, and that's one of the important pieces that we felt needed to be maintained with any proposed site improvements, is that you don't have to go by a parking area at all.
Another question. Thank you for that question, Jenny Jackson. And another question from Jason Thompson was, is there still a plan for a proposed shelter at this site?
All right, so I think, one of the things we've tossed back and forth, but we do have the survey Joe mentioned. Right now, we're not looking at a shelter. It was identified in the master plan as a shelter site, because I think the closest shelter site we have is about 6.5 miles away, approximately. But we were looking at that camping platform. And then we would really like to hear from all of you on this call. So with the survey that's going to come out later this week, we want some input on the amenities, what we're proposing here today, or what you think might be missing. So we'll kick that one back to everybody on the call.
Nathan Wright asks, why would any vehicles need to get past that turnaround spot?
Well, I think with Will, do you want to talk a little bit about this one? I think this one might be a good one for you to talk about the bridge.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's the maintenance that'll need to occur to the bridge, periodic maintenance, and we're talking about some lumber replacements, that sort of thing, to the bridges, the platforms, and to the boardwalk itself. I'll sort of talk about Jeannie's question again. It's an easier walk down from the parking area than it is back up to the parking area. So I think just in general, Nathan is like giving maintenance in order for maintenance to occur regularly, we found that to make it easier for maintenance to occur is sort of to plan for maintenance to occur versus just not planning for it to occur, and making it easier. So that's really where we're thinking.
Great. There's several questions that are kind of related to each other, I think. So I'm just going to go through the series of them and then hand it off to you, Lea Ann, to point them in the right direction. The first one is from, and it's not really a question, it's a comment from Matt Benefield. Hunters often fall asleep on the trail. No arms required for turkey hunters. Easy foot access concerns him for this investment. Maggie Johnson also asks, I know that they've talked about vandalism possibilities in the area. Wild Alabama is all about education as a means over time to connect local people to Pinhoti, the Talladega National Forest. Over time, we believe that this respect will help to prevent vandalism, but what are plans to address it in the short term? And then DeForest Tuggle asks, is there a long-term maintenance plan that will be put into place after the improvements are made?
You want me to take part of those, Joe?
That'd be great. No, Lea Ann, you were on mute, sorry.
I was kicking that to Cindy anyway.
Okay. As far as long-term maintenance plan, one of the things that we plan to do, and we are going to do with all of our projects, is to have a plan devised by Lea Ann and Will as what type of maintenance is needed for any infrastructure that's put in place. And so that will be left with the Forest Service or whoever the landowner is. We also are looking to make sure that there are people there that can support that, and we will continue to support maintenance for sites that we improve over time. So yes, there's a plan. It will be a more detailed plan once we know exactly what the improvements will be. I agree with you, Maggie. Short term is always the challenge of how we turn the tide on vandalism and disrespect of areas like this. That's why we're putting so much energy into the discussion about where the gates are placed and working closely with the Forest Service on how to manage access and how far in to allow the access. And that's some of the critical things for those of you who know the area that we're really looking to find out. On that plateau, as you first come in, as Lea Ann said, it's an open woodland savanna, very healthy habitat, but it's also very conducive to drive around a gate. So how do we manage that? And where are the pinch points, if you will, that we could do something with a physical barrier? Also socially, and knowing who people are and knowing what motivates them to do these things and how we might turn that tide as well. So I hear you, Maggie. We're listening, and definitely want Wild Alabama to be a part of this solution and helping people understand the importance of these areas.
Great, thanks, Cindy. Another question, Tom Kaufman said, wonderful work, Lea Ann and Will and all, so sensitively done. It's nice to hear nice things. And then he had a question, just wondered, will the foundations of the cabins be left alone as archaeological remains?
Yes, and Cindy, I can give a little bit of this and you can add on to it, but as Cindy mentioned, one of the partners in the project is Rose Pearson with the University of Alabama Office of Archaeological Research, has been at the site documenting any of our cultural resources and historic resources like that. So we do not plan to have any disturbance around those foundation sites as part of this work. There's a story to be told there, and that's one of the interpretive signage opportunities that we have identified.
Yeah, and as whoever asked that, Nathan or Tom Kaufman, as you guys know, that will be through a consultation with the Forest Service and the Alabama Historical Commission. And so those sites will be protected through whatever means they tell us is needed out there.
Thanks, Cindy. A couple more comments. Nathan Wright says, thanks, Will. I'm concerned because while looking at the rest of Horn Mountain, these ATVs are creating their own paths around gates. As you can hear, safety and vandalism is a major concern. New structures will attract non-hikers on a hiker-only trail. Horn Mountain has become a place that we advise hikers to be careful on the weekends.
So I think for this one, great comments. We're also very familiar with the challenges at Horn Mountain. We do have some benefits with where we're looking at vehicles being, of course, being respectful of, the U.S. Forest Service and their ownership of this land and kind of operations of this land. But some of this is just getting eyes on the trail and then making sure that we have people there. And then also using the natural terrain to our advantage to discourage and kind of prevent those vehicles from getting down into the creek. And so we've looked at some of the elements that we can bring in from a design standpoint of bringing in the natural stone boulder areas and blocking off those flatter, more attractive, accessible areas, and then working those in between the natural terrain that we have. So great comments.
We have another question. They're just coming in so quickly. That's great. What protect Matt? My chat keeps jumping. Sorry. Matt Benefield asks, what protection does the Pinhoti have if this land is sold? Easements have brought challenges north in section 13.
I think I can probably answer that one, Joe, and probably should defer to the Forest Service, but I do know the answer is that the Forest Service currently has no authority to sell property. It is belongs to the United States government in perpetuity. And so that is one of the good things about federal lands, and they belong to all of us. They might can trade them, but they can't sell them. So that's the benefit of public lands.
Hooray for public lands. Tom Kaufman asks, what types of original organic vegetation would there be?
Okay. So great. If Tom, if you would have jumped on kind of prior to the call, Joe and I were comparing our native habitats that we're working on in our own personal yards. But this site, because it is such a healthy, maintained forest, the closer you get to the lake and the creek itself is the more abundance of native vegetation we have. So we really only identified a couple of pockets with the bamboo and the parrot feather that is in the lake itself that is those invasive species. But once you clear that out, there's already existing understory vegetation with native redbuds and sweet bay magnolias and beech trees on the hillside, and then wetland plants around the perimeter of the creek itself. So I think that would be part of the interpretive story to tell, is looking at identification and making sure that a bio study is done so that those habitats, there's a lot of micro habitats just on this site because of the terrain you have being up high on the Pinhoti, and then you come down through that forest and get to the lake and the creek. So numerous biodiversity on the site.
Awesome. We do have a question that's pretty specific from Nathan Wright. This may sound crazy, but is 60 foot long enough? Have we measured the flood zone after big rains? And will the bridge be good if it is slightly underwater?
Will, do you want to take this one, or do you want me to speak to the design report?
I think, yeah, you can speak maybe to the design report, but I could say, yeah, 60 foot is long enough to clear the creek. And in terms of just sort of a visual analysis of the height of floods in that area, it seems like it's well out of the flooding of that creek. The bridge is not intended to be underwater, but the foundations on each side are designed and meant for any future scouring that occurs from floods.
Yeah, so to build off that is just to let everyone know is that we did have a field survey done of the proposed area of the bridge and the area around it. And we looked at the geological base, so building in a natural stone base versus building on soils that erode. So this has good bank stability in the location of the proposed bridge. We are definitely up out of the floodway area. So we have that, our surveyor looked at the hydrology and the hydraulics through the site. So we're good there. And then the materials are just very durable. At a standpoint, we did evaluate according to the U.S. Forest Service bridge guidelines. We evaluated the options for steel bridges, aluminum bridges, fiberglass reinforced bridges, and timber bridges. And this type of weathered steel bridge for the area it needed to cross, building off those type of foundations and looking at less long-term maintenance, minimizing long-term maintenance. This type of bridge was best suited for the field conditions and thinking long-term. So hopefully that was able to clear up.
Great, thank you, Lea Ann. Thanks, everybody. I think we're running towards the end of our time together. If anybody has a last-minute question they'd like to ask, please feel free to drop it into the chat. I'm going to include in the chat the links to our social media and our website. So y'all feel free to join us on social media and check out our website. We try to continually add new information as we go. Don't forget that you will also get a survey later this week that will ask some questions, some real specific kind of yes, no questions, and then a couple of open-ended questions that you can expound on however you feel. So we really appreciate it.
So unless there's any more questions, and again, you can keep communicating with us through all the methods that Joe just shared. I thank everybody for joining us. Looks like we've had a good crowd. I do want to give a shout out to a couple of our board members from the Trails Foundation. Jeannie Jackson was online, asked some good questions. Tom Crothers, our president, was here. And Kate Nielsen. And if I've missed anybody else, I am so sorry. I was watching all the names fly by. So it's good to see all these familiar names and faces. And I thank you so much for being a part of this, and the conversation will continue.
Jeff Hayes has his hand up.
Are you waving goodbye, Jeff, or you got a question?
I have a question.
Okay.
You asked for more questions, and I sent it in the chat, and I think it's an important question. If you could, I'll repeat it, but if not, you can just read it off there.
Okay, let me find it. I'm sorry.
Okay.
They were coming fast and our screen was rolling on us, so my apologies.
Yeah, and Cynthia, I've been involved in this a long time, so you know, I have the history of what we've talked about in terms of the Pinhoti, and that's really where that grows out of. Loop
Just ask
trails.
this question again, Jeff. I'm not seeing it on the chat, so just ask it.
And that may be me, and I'm sorry that it seems like I have the privilege of using my voice and others don't. Have you folks considered, and I'm sure you have, loop trails in other places, but this strikes me with this access and trailhead as a good place to establish a loop trail up to Horn Mountain, and then maybe coming back down on a new trail segment. Because as you know, the Pinhoti Trail does not have a lot of loops. I'll take my answer off the air.
Okay, well, and one of the things that we are looking at is how to get more people on the trail, and how to make more connectivity into communities. And so we have had those conversations, and haven't thought necessarily about going all the way up to Horn, because that is a fairly arduous trek up to the top from the bottom, but it's something that we'll look into. But loop trails are something that we're looking at, especially as, I don't know if you know Joe Watts very well, but he's an avid birder. And so we're looking for other things people can do along the trail to have increased interest. That's why we try to interpret the history of the area, but the restoration activities that the Forest Service is doing, and the importance of the longleaf restoration. I think there's a lot of good birding both on the trail as it parallels Dry Creek, but also as you get up into the uplands, into those savanna habitats. So yes, we are looking at greater use and more interest along the trail for different types of people to spark their interest and get them out in the great outdoors. So thank you for that. I will answer one question. Probably shouldn't go there, but it seems to be a reoccurring theme on the initiative, and I'm only going to answer it, and we're not going to go into any great detail, but the initiative relative to the Appalachian Trail. As I said in my introduction, we are here to convene people, to build consensus, and to support our land managers. We are not here to be divisive. The more we can pull together to improve the Pinhoti and make it the jewel that it is and connect to these cities, I think that is our mission as the Trails Foundation. It's not to get involved in the political policies. So that's our answer for that. And thank you for your interest, but that's as far as we're going.
Yeah, and I know, thank you, Cindy. I know we're out of time, so I do want to encourage everybody that is on this call. You are going to get a survey. There's a response question there. So any additional thoughts that you think of later on that you would like to share, please feel free to respond to that survey, and that information will be coming back to everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Do expect an email from me later this week.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.